Victory Monday, ladies and gentlemen, right here in the House Insurance Committee. All right, first off, I want to ask if there are any bill introductions or requests for bill drafts is actually the correct terminology. Committee-sponsored bill drafts. Yes, that is correct. Eric Turek of the Insurance Department. Welcome to committee, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here to request 25 RS 0260, which is a bill that concerns accreditation standards for the Department of Insurance.
All right. Are there any objections to entering? Seeing none. Very good. It will be. Are there any other draft requests for the committee? Yes, Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request introduction of RS 0745, which is about maternity centers being added as eligible for the healthcare stabilization.
Third time's a charm.
This is it. I can feel it.
All righty. Any objections, committee? Seeing none. Very good. It'll be entered. We'll have a riveting hearing on that one, too, that we've only done 3 times. All right. I also, as the chair, I also have 3 requests for bill introductions, or bill drafts. One regards the Board of Pharmacy and their, predominantly their telepharmacy regulations. That is RS 0781. Any objections? Seeing none. Very good. It's entered. One is dealing with the state employee health plan. We may recognize that one from last year. That is RS 0511. Any objections? All right, seeing none. And third is an edited version of our hospital pricing transparency bill from last year, RS 0510. Objections to that one? Seeing none. Okay, all 3 are now in the hopper. Now, committee, did you have the opportunity to review the House committee minutes from Friday, January 17? You should have those in your email and I think sitting in front of you. I would enter Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we approve the wonderful minutes of Friday, January 17th and Wednesday, January 22nd.
You got ahead of me. That's awesome. Is there a second? Representative Bergquist, seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, very good. Minutes are approved. Now, committee. You may have noticed from our schedule that I have a rather aggressive schedule for this week. Most of these are, okay, for the new folks, these are new bills. I can't help you on that one. But for the most part, these are things that we do on a yearly basis or have looked at in the past. So we may be moving a little quickly. Don't let that pressure you in any way. If you have questions, feel free to ask them, but we are going to be moving very, very quickly through some of these this week. The sexy ones will be coming in the incoming weeks, but we have some fun in insurance, and you know it. But these are not that for the most part. But there's some interesting stuff going on. Pay attention. Obviously, if you have questions, ask questions. But we are going to move very, very quickly. First, so to get things started, we have a HB 2042, and to get us started and up to speed. Come on, Eileen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, committee. House Bill 2042 requires title agents to make their audit reports available for inspection instead of submitting their reports annually. It requires the amount of surety bonds filed with the Commissioner of Insurance to be standardized at $100,000, and it eliminates the controlled business exemption in certain counties. So House Bill 2042 amends KSA 40-1137 and 40-401139 pertaining to title agents, and it amends KSA 40-2404 pertaining to unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive acts or practices in insurance. Section 1 amends KSA 40-1137, and under current law, it requires a title insurance agent to have an annual audit made of the agent's escrow, settlement, and closing deposit accounts conducted by a CPA or a title insurer for which the agent has a licensing agreement. The title insurance agent is required to submit a copy of that audit report to the commissioner within 30 days of the close of the calendar year for which the audit is issued. This bill would no longer require that audit report be submitted to the commissioner, but would only require that the report be available for inspection upon request. Section 2 amends KSA 40-1139, and under that, title agents are required to file a surety bond or irrevocable letter of credit with the commissioner. The amount of the surety bond or irrevocable, letter of credit is required, that's required depends on the location of the property and the population of the county in which the property for which the transactions are primarily based is located. 2042 would standardize the amount of the surety bond or irrevocable letter of credit at $100,000. Section 3, under current law, no title agent or title insurer may accept an order for business if the agent or insurer knows or has reason to believe that the business will constitute controlled business for them, and if 70% or more of the closed title orders for that title insurer or title agent during the past 12 months immediately preceding the month in which the transaction takes place is derived controlled business. Currently, the statute grants an exception for transactions involving real estate that take place in counties with a population of 10,000 or less, and this bill would eliminate that exception. And Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
All right. All right. I said none of these were consequential. I fibbed. This one has some substance to it. All right. Eileen, if you could help me out just a little bit on this section 3, I lost track of what we were talking about. Could you first off go under controlled business definition?
I would prefer if the department does that. I can explain it to you, but there's like a 4 or 5% chance that I'm going to completely make a fool out of myself. So I think they'd be much better at it.
I like your odds, but I'll still go with it. All right, that's cool. But in a nutshell, we're eliminating an exemption
That currently exists.
that currently exists that would then require. Okay, we'll get with the department on this one. All right, questions for Eileen? Committee? Seeing none. All right, well, stay tuned. We'll get you on the next one. Yeah, exactly. You'll have a lot of opportunity here. All right, as the lone proponent, as I understand it, for HB 2042, we have not Eric Turek, which is a shocker for everyone here, but we instead have Kyle Strathman, Deputy Chief of Staff from the Kansas Insurance Department. Welcome to committee, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, I am not Eric Turek. I think the last time I was in front of this committee, though, the Chiefs had just won the Super Bowl, so I just want to say that maybe there's something going here, so we'll stay tuned on that. And
very much welcome to committee.
Thank you again for the opportunity to testify on this bill today. Really, in the interest of time, I know we have several bills in front, and you hearing the chair say that you guys want to move pretty quickly. I'll keep this fairly brief in my remarks and take any questions that anybody might have. House Bill 2042, you may remember, Mr. Chair, we did have a bill that related to title insurance last year. The department may have been a little hasty when we brought that bill last year, and upon reflection and some discussion with some interested stakeholders, we actually retracted that bill after it was introduced in order to take a look at some of the issues that were raised by some of the industry stakeholders with that. We did that in the interim, and that new bill today, 2042, is what you see as a result of that discussion with industry. So some of this, obviously, we didn't have a hearing on it, but it is an issue that we have been looking at for a while. And I want to reiterate that we did work with industry and to try to address some of their concerns, and that's where we're at today. With that, I also want to make a request and an acknowledgement of a mistake that we made with when we sent this bill over to the reviser, and I sincerely apologize for this. I think that we had intended this to be this bill to take effect upon not upon passage or upon publication in the register, the statute book, and actually had intended it to go into effect on January 1, 2026. That was an error on our part. I think we just omitted that when we sent it over to the reviser, just didn't have that changed. And that was reflective of our conversations with industry. If we did pass this bill, they wanted a little bit of time for this to be brought up to speed. So I would request, or the department would request, that when you do work this bill, we'd seek an amendment to change that publication date. So really quick, the department's position on this bill, really why we're bringing it, is to create and close some of the, not loopholes necessarily, but some of the problems that we have as it relates to the enforcement of this bill. It really does three things, as Eileen mentioned. The first part is that audit requirement. Currently, title agents, insurers are required to file these audits with the department, and they're required to have the audit in the first place, and then further up, follow up and file that audit with the department. The issue that we have with that is we currently have somewhere around 2,000 title agents, I believe, registered. I think that's as of August, so that's probably changed a little bit. So we have a lot of these reports that we get every single year. That takes an inordinate, so much staff time to actually collect, collate, take these audits, place them in a place where we can actually utilize them. So it takes just a ton of staff time and resource to actually to take these ones. And it's also an inconvenience for the title agent who has to provide these. They have to send them to us, collate them every year, and get them. This bill would not eliminate that audit requirement, just to be clear. We're just simply making it available upon the request of the commissioner, so that in the event that we would actually need the audit, we still have that ability to request it. We just don't need to send and spend time, effort, resources from the department side as well as the agent side when we don't actually have an immediate need for it. That's the first piece. The second piece is the surety bond standardization. Currently, there's a 3-tier surety bond for agents, title agents, and it's based on county population. We're proposing with this bill to simplify that to a single bond of $100,000. This is another one of those things that it can be very difficult for the department to sort of track these things. It's also difficult for the industry to sort of maintain these different types of bonds with the different levels of the counties. And a lot of title, I don't want to speak necessarily for the industry, but it's our understanding that a lot of title agents operate in multiple counties. So they're not required to have a bond for every county. They're just required to have a bond, in this case, for the highest, if that 100,000, if they are in a population county or a county with a population that would hit that highest bond, the highest level of population that they would just have to have that highest tier of bond. So in reality, a lot of this is already happening, even if they are operating in counties with lower populations. We simply seek to standardize that into a single bond. And then the last thing, we are seeking to eliminate the controlled business exemption for counties of population of 10,000 or less. This, Kansas is, I believe, one of the only states, if not the only state, that has this remaining exemption on the books for controlled business prohibitions. This is the thing that really makes it difficult when we started to take a look at some of these statutes as it relates to title. It becomes incredibly difficult for the department to enforce this sort of prohibition, because when we receive these controlled business reports from our title agents, there's really not a good way for us to verify that they are riding in the counties that they say they are, and then therefore would qualify for this exemption. So this, again, is a way for us to simplify that. It removes something that makes it very difficult for us to enforce existing statutes, and it just creates uniformity across the board for the entire state. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my remarks, and I would take any questions.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Let's go back to that section 3 that you were just talking about. First, two questions really. One, controlled business. What are we even talking about? And two, you said very difficult to track down what county they're in. Tell me about both of those things, if you would.
So current statute, the controlled business, and Eileen said a 4 to 5% chance of making a fool. I might have a slightly higher percentage than that, so I apologize if I don't necessarily jump. I do have Philip Michael. He's our regulatory counsel at the department here, so if there's a question I can't answer as it relates to this, I'd respectfully turn it over to him. But essentially, controlled business is any business that would be derived by, if you're a title agent and, for example, and you have a realty piece, and as a realtor through the closing process, you would refer that business to the title agent, that could be considered a sort of controlled business. What current statute is that you can derive a certain percentage of your business, I think it's 70% by statute, from that controlled business relationship. But you can't go over that, and then current exemption would be if you're operating in a county of 10,000 or less, that exemption just flat out, or that controlled business requirement just doesn't apply to you at that point. So controlled business, it's really to try to cut down, I think, on perception from the consumer side that they're not just getting steered towards, somebody who has an interest in that, or a controlled business interest in that entity. So that's really kind of what that is dealing with. And again, we're not seeking to remove that controlled business statute or that language, just the exemption for the counties with 10,000 or less population.
All right, has there been discussion, and maybe I'm off base here, would that make it difficult in those lower population counties to provide the services that we're, the title service that we're looking at here? If that exemption does not exist any longer.
Sure. From our perspective, when we were talking about this bill over the interim period with industry, we asked that question, and there wasn't much concern. And again, I don't want to speak for the title industry here, but in our discussions, there wasn't concern that was raised about removing that exemption. Again, there's most other states don't have this potentiality. And it really just creates for us something that, even if they were doing that or offering it over the limit, it just creates that uncertainty. It would be very difficult to enforce from our perspective.
Excellent. All right. Okay. First, Representative Bergquist, then Williams is on deck.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Simple question, hopefully, back to section 2. The $100,000 number, in a more general sense, is it considered by the industry to be not onerous on the agents as a whole?
Yeah. So generally, yes. And again, I want to make clear I'm not speaking on their behalf, but in our discussions that we had when we brought and had conversations about this bill, they had no objection to that, and that it wouldn't create, because the reality, I think, from their end is that a lot of title agents are already operating in counties where they operate in multiple counties, so they're already at that higher level of bond anyway. So there wasn't any concern there.
So, but it helps you not to have near as much monitoring to verify when most everybody's going to be at the same level.
Right. It simply just standardizes it in the statute, so we don't have to, look at these go back in if there was a question and look at were they operating in a county of less than 10,000 or not, and making sure. So it definitely helps with the compliance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. And Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So previously or right now, currently, the insurance department, they just collect the audits. So do you actually collect data that says how many agents are in compliance, or were you just collecting the audits and keeping them on record?
So currently we do collect them. If somebody is not in compliance with, I'm not 100% sure that I have the answer to what those numbers would be, but we would have the potential to review those audits, and if they were not in compliance at that point.
So you don't have a compliance rate. That's not something that you collect. You just hold them. That's really what I'm driving at. You collect the audits, but you don't review them. What I'm trying to ascertain is, do we have any knowledge of the compliance rate for these agents? But it sounds like you don't collect that.
We collect the audits. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have the compliance rate for that.
Which means you collect the audits, but you don't do anything with them, so now you just want to, unless you need to.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a little puzzled by that. I would presume the purpose of an annual audit is you're checking the agency for sort of its either financial stability or its just, that it's following the law or something. And so, I mean, what is the purpose of the audit that you don't even look at it? I mean, aren't you trying to protect the consumer from some, fiasco by some title agency?
Thank you for the question. That's a good question. The audit from our statute and them having to provide it, most of these title agents have to do this audit essentially anyway. Again, for those reasons that you mentioned, from our perspective, there is no reason to request it to be sent. So we're not necessarily getting rid of the audit unless there is an issue that we could go and then request it. So it's not, the audit itself does serve that function. We're just saying you don't need to send them to us every 30 calendar days or every year for us to make that determination.
But it would not be the case that if the audit shows some sort of irregularity, wouldn't you, from just a consumer protection angle, want to immediately be aware of that so it could be redressed or solved or something? I mean, I would think that would be wise, insurance, oversight procedure.
Certainly, and I guess maybe reframing this as, we have so many of these that if we were to dedicate a full-on staff of reviewing and going through every single one of these audits, that we would have to drastically staff up essentially and spend more resources to arrive at that potentiality, which is part of the reason why when we are asking that they don't be sent to us and that we can make them available upon request, we wouldn't have to potentially pursue something like that.
Sure, fire away.
What is the basic cost of a surety bond for $100,000? I mean, how much is that a year? Do you know what the rough cost compared to a $50,000 or $25,000 bond?
I don't necessarily know the answer to that. If I may, I might point that to.
Somebody has a rough idea? I mean, just.
Don't have a rough idea, but we could probably come up with something for you.
Okay. I mean, it would be helpful because it is increasing the cost for these companies that currently only have the 50 or 20,000 or less. Anyway, thank you.
All right. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So coming back to this, if you have a CPA that finds that there's noncompliance in an audit doesn't go well, are they required to report that to the insurance commissioner? Or who do they report that to? It just goes back to the agent?
I believe they report that to us. Yeah, they would have to report, they would be required to report that to us.
And what's that threshold? Where they have to just any noncompliance, or what percentage of?
Do you have any answer to that? My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Don't have a rough idea, but we could probably come up with something for you. Okay. I mean, it would be helpful because it is increasing the cost for these companies that currently only have the 50 or 20,000 or less. Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, Philip Michaels, our regulatory counsel, he deals with title. He might be better equipped to answer some of these.
Absolutely. You can use the phone a friend. Go ahead and introduce yourself to committee.
Certainly. My name is Philip Michael. I'm lead regulatory counsel with the agency, and I'm also about a foot shorter than Kyle, so that's why I'm lower in the.
I get it.
Can you please kind of repeat your question to make sure I'm 100% on the same page with you?
Yes, so basically my question is if an agent is non-compliant in their audit, then the CPA is required, I understand, to send that information to the insurance commissioner. At what threshold is non-compliance? What level?
Basically, any noncompliance is noncompliance. So
one error?
one error of any kind of substance, so any material noncompliance. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I did just Google the surety bond cost, and it said between $500,000 and $10,000, so that's a big range.
Which is why we're going to try to find you something a little more exact than that, hopefully.
All right. Okay, very good. Committee, any further questions? Yes, Representative James.
Who requires the audit? Is it who's requiring the audit in the first place? And what type of audit is it? You're talking about audits.
I believe it's required by statute. Right, it's required by the statute that were provided.
And so if it's required by statute and you just want to ignore it, you're saying?
No, again, we're not saying that we don't want the audits.
When somebody's non-compliant, what do you do to them?
We have the potential to revoke their license and their ability to sell insurance as well as penalize them financially.
Some of these title companies, since I'm a real estate broker, are very small companies. Do you think where did this 100,000, the amount come out to be?
That, again, was when we had discussions in the interim of.
Some of these companies are like two people that work there in these smaller communities. I don't know if they're paying a lot now, but if it's between, you really can't guess if it's between 500 and 10,000. We're put a burden on a lot of them.
And we understand that, and that's part of the reason why when we had that bill introduced last year, we realized maybe that we had take a step back and maybe have a different conversation with stakeholders, which when we did this interim, they essentially were fine with us in moving to the $100,000 requirement. So we engaged with interest.
When you said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When you said that, when you talk to them, is it bigger companies that you talk to? Were they the big title companies that you talk to, like ones that have several?
We had conversations with the association, the title association groups, so representative of, I think, memberships and from all over the state, big or small.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Committee, any further questions? All right, Representative Chauncey.
Just a quick question on your audits. You're collecting all this data, but you're not per se just going through all, I mean, how many audits are we talking here? Are we talking, you mentioned a couple thousand agents, I guess. Is that the number of audits? Is it an annual audit, or are we talking multiple audits throughout the year? I mean, what's the number we're talking?
It's an annual, but I believe they have different times at what they have to submit that. So I know we have 2,000 registered title agents that this might apply to, so I think it several thousand nearly every year, right? Yeah, so essentially that amount every year.
A couple thousand is what you're saying? Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, committee, any further questions? This is the loan proponent that's of record anyway, so this is your opportunity, this is what you got. All right, seeing none, very good. Thank you for being here, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. I have no one else listed as a proponent for 2042. Would anyone care to testify as a proponent? Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony and open neutral testimony. I have no one listed. Is anyone feeling strongly neutral today? Like to get up and espouse their neutrality? All right. I will close neutral testimony in that case and open opponent testimony. Do I have any opponents in the gallery? I have none listed. Seeing none, I'll close opponent testimony, close the hearing on HB 2042. Let's move on to HB 2043. Let's get us up to speed, Eileen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. You'll be pleased to know that I looked up the pertinent term here in the bill, so I can explain to you what a value-added product or service is when the time comes. So House Bill 2043 requires agents and insurers to respond to inquiries from the Commissioner of Insurance within 14 calendar days, and it also authorizes certain rebate pilot programs to exceed 1 year in duration. So again, KSA 40-2404, and this one comes up a lot this session for some reason, but that's the statute that relates again to unfair methods of competition or unfair and deceptive acts and practices. This bill would amend the statute in 2 ways. So let me give you some background information. An insurer can offer a value-added product or service to their customers if the insurer can prove that, 1, the product or service relates to the insurance coverage that they provide, and 2, that the product or service be primarily designed to provide, and there's a number of different categories, A, loss mitigation or loss control, B, designed to reduce claims cost or claim settlement costs, C, to provide education about liability risks or risk of loss, D, to monitor or assess risk, identify sources of risk, or to develop strategies for eliminating or reducing risk, E, enhance health, F, enhance financial wellness through education or financial planning services, G, provide post-loss services, or H, incentivize behavioral changes through to improve the health or reduce the risk of death or disability of a customer. So the availability of the insurer to offer that value-added product or service is dependent on whether or not that insurer can satisfy the criteria that I just described, and that the product or service be offered in a manner that's not unfairly discriminatory. So if an insurer or producer does not have sufficient evidence but has a good faith belief that the product or service meets those requirements, then the insurer or producer can offer a pilot or testing program that under current law cannot exceed 1 year in length. So long story short, this bill would allow the insurance producer or insurer to extend that 1 year period to a length of time necessary for them to ascertain whether or not the product or service will meet those requirements. 2043 would also amend the statute to make it an unfair method of competition or unfair deceptive trade act or practice by making it an unfair claims settlement practice for an insurer to fail to respond to an inquiry from the department concerning a complaint or inquiry related to a particular matter within 14 calendar days of receipt of the inquiry, and to furnish the department with an adequate response to the inquiry. This bill also amends KSA 40-4909, which is the Uniform Insurance Agents Licensing Act, and adds that failure of an insurer to respond to an inquiry from the insurance department as described to the list of actions, the commission of which could lead the commissioner to deny, suspend, revoke, or refuse to renew a license or application for license. And Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. In the first section here, where we are extending pilot programs for a length of time needed to determine if it meets the criteria, it's a little vague.
I got hung up on that too, especially since it was set at a year to begin with, but apparently the decision was made to make it as however long as necessary for the insurer to determine if it's going to satisfy that criteria or not.
All right, I think that might be a question for the proponent, so he can kind of ready himself. Any further questions for the reviser? Seeing none. All right, see you in a few. All right, the only proponent testimony that I have listed is Eric Turek, Director of Governmental Affairs, Kansas Insurance Department. Different from the letterhead of the testimony provided, oddly enough.
On 2043, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I mean, I see my name there at the bottom, but no matter. Members of the committee.
No. For the written testimony provided from the Kansas Department of Insurance.
Yes. We've made the concerted effort to transition from Kansas Insurance Department to the Department of Insurance.
Cart horse?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Turek from the Department of Insurance. I will simplify the intent of our bill here, House Bill 2043. I'll talk about the value-added service or products first, and then we'll talk about the response timeframes that we are seeking to reduce for insurance companies. So a value-added service is, so the legislature was very clear a few years back. The legislature wanted to clean up what can and what cannot be given with and while selling an insurance policy. And so, but as the revisor stated, there are many clear guidelines as to what those services and products must qualify as. So they must educate the consumer, they must mitigate loss, and the whole host of other provisions in statute. Sometimes the evidence is not immediately known, and so perhaps there might be a wellness program that might be given for free with a health policy. It's not always easy to determine whether or not that mitigates loss or that educates the consumer or how to mitigate loss. So sometimes the insurance companies need more than a year's length of time. So that's as simple as I can put that. And we are happy to grant an extension. Just currently in law, there's no mechanism to allow 366 days. It's just 365 flat. The second aspect of this bill, and I think this is the prime portion of this bill, as you all know, the Kansas Department of Insurance takes many complaints from the public when it concerns insurance complaints. Do you have a question, Mr. Chairman? You're shaking your head.
Well, I do. I'm not familiar with that agency.
The Kansas Department of Insurance, excuse me, I must have made an error, excuse me. The Kansas Department of Insurance, during the calendar year of 2024, we received 3,600 complaints from the public when it comes to insurance problems, and we are more than happy to assist consumers with, or policyholders with their insurance questions and issues. And dating back to 1981 to a model regulation, there's been the threshold or the requirement for insurance companies to respond within 15 business days. That translates into 3 weeks. And typically we receive the complaint from the policyholder after they're frustrated. They need repairs to their vehicle. There's a tree that's fallen on their home, whatever it may be. We don't always receive complaints from policyholders when it's they're not really having a good day when we get their call. But we're still very, very happy to help them. But unfortunately, with that 15 business days requirement, that is the amount of time that insurance companies have to respond to any inquiry from the department, including the complaints. And what we have found is that up to 70% of the time, the companies respond on the 13th, the 14th, or the 15th business day, even in cases when the response is quite simple. And we really believe that a balance here between the needs of the policyholders seeking our assistance and the needs of the insurance company to do the appropriate investigation is 14 calendar days. Again, the 15, we do not communicate with insurance companies by post. You know, and there's the advent of email. There's many, many other faster ways to communicate with companies and the policyholder and agents when they're involved. We really, really want to speed up this time. So happy to stand for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. What was if you could help me with the rationale here. We're moving it forward 1 day. Is that really?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Let me clarify. So the current threshold for insurance agents and companies to respond is 15 business days. We would move that to 14 calendar days. So, and I do want to clarify too, I don't want to interrupt. This requirement would only be for the requirement to respond in cases of consumer complaints, not for any other inquiry. It would just be pertinent to the consumer complaints.
Excellent. All right. Questions for the proponent from the Kansas Insurance Department currently? Yes, Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony and everything. And I'll bite and ask the question. So if they don't respond in 14 days, what happens?
Sure. We have many mechanisms, fines. We can hold a hearing if there's an egregious violation. Fines, hearings, penalties, revocation, suspension.
So the things listed on the page 16, I believe, is like, here are the things that could happen. So those fines and penalties, they carry a fair accountability to it. It's just the fact that we're giving them way too much time to respond in today's era. Is that?
We believe that 15 days is too, or 15 calendar days, let me clarify, or, I'm sorry, 15 business days, it's too long. And I'll say this too, that the department has entered into a pilot program with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners to develop a one-stop portal for insurance companies and the department. So rather than just sending documents, correspondence to one general inbox, the insurance companies and the department can upload specific to the complaint file.
All right. Further questions? Yes, Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here. I guess how many complaints do you typically get, like out of 1,000 insurance claims? Like what's that ratio typically?
Sure. So during last year, we received 3,600 insurance complaints, and that does not include, we get many, many questions about insurance. I have a question about my policy. Why is this in my policy? Why is this not covered? Or, you know, and we typically will help however we can. Sometimes they're out of our jurisdiction. So if it's a Medicaid policy, if it's a Medicare policy, we will refer them to the appropriate agencies. Sometimes we'll open up a complaint on those, or sometimes we'll just refer them and they'll take those steps to contact those appropriate agencies. So by and large, 3,600.
Thank you.
And thank you, Vice Chair, for calling to mind a very important question, and that is, committee members, this will be on the quiz. Are there, you have an infrastructure already developed for dealing with insurance questions, comments, concerns, and complaints, is that right?
If you go to our website, very, very easy to find the complaint form, and that's the main mode of submitting complaints to the department.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you for that. Again, that'll be on the quiz. All right. Committee, further questions for the proponent? We have no, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So who in the Insurance Commission, or you mentioned a database where they upload all their information when they have their pilot program, who determines the sufficient evidence? Is it all the data that's collected, or is it you, or?
Yeah. So I want to distinguish, for the sake of efficiency, we combined the pilot program language with the 14 calendar days portion, so two portions of the bill. But so you're asking who verifies that there is sufficient, bless you, who determines whether there is sufficient evidence that those criteria are met? It's the department, specifically our Rate and Form Compliance Division.
All right. Further questions? Speak now. All right, seeing none. Thanks for being here, Eric. We'll probably be speaking with you again here in just a few minutes. All right, I also have, first off, are there any other members of the gallery who would like to speak as a proponent to HB 2043? Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony and open neutral testimony. Committee, you'll find on your desk there, or on the table in front of you, testimony from the Kansas Association of Property and Casualty Insurance Companies as neutral. Is there anyone who would like to testify in person as being strongly neutral for HB 2043? Or even a little bit neutral, that'd be fine too. All right, seeing none, I'll close neutral testimony. I have no opponent testimony listed. No opponents. If there's anyone opposed to HB 2043, now would be an excellent time to make yourself heard. All right, seeing none, I'll close opponent testimony, close the hearing on HB 2043, and open the hearing on HB 2048. To get us up to speed, Eileen, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2048 eliminates the requirement that the Commissioner of Insurance submit 2 different reports to the governor. Additionally, the bill strikes certain specific entities from the definition of person in the insurance enforcement statute. First, the bill amends KSA 40-108 by removing the requirement that the commissioner make an annual report to the governor of the general conduct and condition of the insurance companies within the state. The bill also amends KSA 40-2253, removing the requirement that the commissioner report to the governor and the legislature regarding the development of uniform electronic data interchange formats and standards with a proposed plan and cost impact assessment. Lastly, the bill amends KSA 40-2,125, which, as you may recall, is the insurance enforcement statute. Back in 2023, we amended the statute to include and any other legal entity under the jurisdiction of the commissioner to the definition of person for whom the enforcement statute applies. This bill would further amend the definition of person and strike certain entities in that listing that are included under the definition. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. All right, looking for that list.
Page 2 of the bill at the bottom.
All right, I think it'll probably be a question for the proponent, but is there any commonality there?
I think they're looking to generalize the definition more than anything and maybe save the state some ink.
I see that with the new letterhead.
Indeed.
All right.
If that bill passes.
Boy, I really hope so. Never know if that one even gets a hearing. All right. Committee, any questions for Eileen regarding HB 2048? All right, seeing none, talk to you in a few. All right, we have the proponent for HB 2048 is Eric Turek. Welcome back, Eric.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Eric Turek with the Kansas Department of Insurance. We're pleased to be here.
There is no Department of Insurance, Eric.
With the department, Mr. Chairman. We are pleased to, we introduced this bill, and first I'll speak about the reports aspect of the bill, and then I'll speak to the definition of person. To be clear, well, there's one report, Mr. Chairman, that's more or less a proto-internet it's a report on the development of uniform electronic data interchange formats and standards from 1993. This is purely cleanup. I'm not sure if this report was submitted to the legislature and governor then, but that is from 1993. The second is a bill, or if you look at section 1, it requires the Commissioner of Insurance to submit a report to the governor on the state of insurance companies in Kansas. I will say that number 1, we post this report on our website, and number 2, that the Commissioner of Insurance is elected by the people of Kansas and not appointed by the governor. And then lastly, the definition of person on page 2, the revisor is correct. We are trying to simplify this, the laundry list of entities that we regulate at the department. And as the revisor stated, we added and any other legal entity under the jurisdiction of the commissioner on line 38. To encapsulate, it really ensures that the legislature doesn't have to constantly visit the statute whenever we regulate something new. And by eliminating this entire portion, we don't have to visit the statute when the legislature chooses to deregulate something. For example, automobile clubs is on line 34 of page 2. The department has not regulated automobile clubs in 4 years, Mr. Chairman, and so again, our prime intent here is to ensure that we don't constantly have to revisit the statute as the regulatory oversight changes.
All right, thank you, Eric. And didn't we take automobile clubs out last year? It seems like I remember this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you are correct. And the legislature passed this bill, 2530 last year, 40-0 and 118-0. It died in conference.
Perfect, perfect. That's exactly what I like to hear. Our efforts wasted. All right. Questions for Eric Turek. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where would we find the annual report on your website? I'm looking.
It should be under the publications section.
We'll pause for a moment to make sure it's found.
And I'd be happy to email the committee the report as well.
All right, that would be very nice. All right, committee, further questions for Eric? From the insurance department, until we pass the bill, that's what it's called. All right, questions? Seeing none. All right, you got off easy there. We'll see you in a few. All right, I have no other proponents listed. Would anyone like to speak as a proponent? Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony on 2048 and open neutral testimony. Anyone feeling neutral? Seeing none, I'll close neutral testimony. And anyone in opposition of 2048 present? I have none listed. Seeing none, all right, I'll close opponent testimony on 2048, close the hearing on HB 2048, and open the hearing on HB 2049, updating public adjuster and insurance agent statutes pertaining to suspension, revocation, denial of licensure, and license renewal. Take it away, Eileen. I got you a running head start with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2049 does just what the chairman said. It updates public adjuster and insurance agent statutes pertaining to suspension, revocation, denial of licensure, and licensure renewal. House Bill 2049 amends KSA 40-5510, which is the public adjuster licensing statute, and we've done that in order to make the statute consistent with KSA 40-4909, which is the insurance agent licensing statute. Most of the amendments being made to the public adjuster statute are made just to simply replicate the language from the insurance agent licensing statutes. The bill also makes some amendments to the insurance agent licensing statute to correspond with the changes being made to the public adjuster licensing statute. I would like to kind of give you an example of that. If you have the bill in front of you and you look at page 6, you see all of that italicized information. That's all new language in the public adjuster statute. And then if you take the bill and flip to page 2, the bottom probably third of it, starting at C1 and into page 3, that's all where the language came. So it truly is just to kind of standardize the language between the two licensing statutes. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
All right. Questions for Eileen? Yes. Vice Chair Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 5, I guess bullet 15, is that 15 calendar days?
Page 5, bullet 15, feeling,
To be consistent with the last.
you know, that's a really great question, and I will make sure that I follow up with the department on that.
Okay, thank you.
Nice work. All right. Further questions for the committee, for the reviser? Seeing none. All right. Thank you, Eileen. We'll be waiting with bated breath to get that answer, by golly. Well, I'm imagining so. All right. Proponent testimony, I have Eric Turek, Director of Governmental Affairs for HB 2049. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Turek with the Kansas Insurance Department.
Thank you,
I will be proper. The revisor was correct, and so the insurance department licenses 200,000+ insurance agents and about, I believe last I checked, it was only a couple hundred public adjusters. Simply put, this bill brings parity to both statutes. The provisions on page 6 that are copied from page 2 They come from the NEIC's producer licensing model law. In essence, so whenever we license an individual, we consider any offenses that an individual may have committed, including felonies and misdemeanors. The part that's being added to page 6, that's already present that's already applicable when we review insurance agents' licenses. If you look at page 6, so the commissioner shall consider the age in which an offense took place, the recency, the severity, the seriousness, et cetera. So it really just gives some flexibility there for the commissioner to consider when licensing individuals. That's already present, again, in the insurance agent statute. We are just copying that over to the public adjuster statute. And one item I do also want to bring up, Mr. Chairman, and I'm looking for the section right now, but I can't see it. If you look at the bottom of page 1 on line 39, and that's also equivalent in the public adjuster side later in the bill, if an individual has their insurance agent license, their public adjuster license, or their securities registration, we would like the ability to use that as we consider whether to revoke, deny, or suspend one's insurance license. So if they lose one, we want to use that knowledge when considering whether to act on their other license.
Very good. Or do we have any questions for Eric? We can revisit the question on page 5 there, if you have an answer on.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can. Because I honestly can't answer why that does not have 15 business days right there, but I do want to be clear that it is our intent to change the requirement for individuals responding to consumer complaints from the insurance department to 14 calendar days. These are 2 separate bills, however, so this is copying what is already currently in statute and doesn't address that.
Okay, so this is currently going to be 15 business days, or you're wanting to change that to 14 calendar days?
Ultimately, we will prefer to change this to 14 calendar days, but they're 2 separate bills and we wanted to keep those policies separate.
All right, committee, I think we probably might want to look at an amendment on that, just so that we're not coming back to do a, I would think so, yeah. And if the agency has an issue, they can let us know, I mean. Right, as opposed to. All right, very good. All right, further questions for Eric? Yes, Representative Bergquist.
Yes, Mr. Turek. I believe how many did you state there is as far as insurance agents in the state?
Licensed within the state, it's 220,000. The majority of those are non-resident agents. I think we have about 20 or so thousand insurance agents who are licensed and are resident agents here. Mm-hmm.
And this is just an information question that I'll hold on to for later because I want to prove that I paid attention to the chair. So. Well, the question is, if I'm as a resident of the state of Kansas and I have an insurance question about my agent and how they're handling things, where would I get that form from your website? Would I be able to download that form and then fill it out and send it to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
That infrastructure exists. Excellent to know. Quiz question. All right. Further questions for the proponent? The lone proponent. Oh, wait, no, that's not true. Hold on. The lone in-person proponent. All right, seeing none. Thanks for being here, Eric. All right, committee, you'll also find there is written-only testimony from Greg Sepik, Director of Office, and maybe I pronounced that right, maybe I did not, Director of Office of Strategy, Policy, and Government Affairs with the National Insurance Crime Bureau. So review that as you're able to. It's here in your stack as well. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as a proponent of HB 2049? All right. Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony, open neutral testimony. Anyone feeling neutral about it? Like to testify? Seeing none, closed neutral testimony and open opponent testimony. Do we have anyone in opposition to HB 2049? I have none listed. Seeing none, I'll close opponent testimony, close the hearing on HB 2049, and open a hearing on HB 2050. Eileen, get us up to speed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. The brief looks long, but the explanation is really short, so stay with me here. House Bill 2050 authorizes the Commissioner of Insurance to set the amount of the fee collected in the statutes listed below. Currently, and this is going to sound very familiar to a lot of you from last year, but currently each of the listed statutes specifies a flat fee that is being charged for the purpose stated in the statute. What this bill would do would change each of those flat fees and turn it into a ceiling, a maximum amount that the fee, and a maximum amount of the fee that could be charged. The bill would also grant the commissioner the authority to set the amount of the fee for each year, decide that by December 1st of each calendar year, and then have that published in the Kansas Register for the upcoming year. And again, the statutes are listed in the order in which they appear in the bill, and I can stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, so just for those who have been playing this game before, this is the up to bill, right?
Up to bill.
Okay, very good. Where the licensing fees are now up to X amount rather than.
Actually, I think it's not to exceed now, so we changed it.
Oh, ho, ho.
It sounded
getting
more,
formal.
impressive.
I see. All right, very nice. Not to exceed. This is the not to exceed bill, which is far different than the up to bill from last year. All right, questions for the reviser? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Ellie. I think you have done a fantastic job. We've got us through all, 5 of these bills already. Fantastic. Okay. For proponent testimony, I have none other than Eric Turek, Director of Governmental Affairs from the Kansas Insurance Department. I know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Eric Turek from the Kansas Insurance Department, and the reviser stated clearly, I'll trust her judgment in whether this was up to or not to exceed in the previous bills, but I do want to first start by talking about 2090, House Bill 2090 from 2 years ago in 2023. The legislature passed this bill and allowed the insurance commissioner the flexibility to lower agent licensure fees. And so, the commissioner published those fees in the register on December 1 of 2023. So during the entirety of entirety of calendar year 2024, those fees were roughly cut in half, and we were able to save new licensees or new entrants into the industry over $1 million in their initial license fee. Secondly, and so we're very happy with the pilot program, if you will, and so we want to move on or build off of that. This bill does look familiar, though, because this committee did hear House Bill 2715, and that passed 40 to 0 and 119 to 0. It died in conference. So for the purpose of the not to exceed portion of the bill, that part is exactly the same. One other item in this bill that I do want to mention is something known as I do want to talk about appointments. And so I know that I'll look to the agents in the room. You know that you need not just an insurance agent's license to sell insurance, you also need to be appointed by a specific company before you can sell for that particular company. And this is an annual fee of $2 if you're a domestic company, and a $5 fee, again, it's per agent if you are a foreign company or an out-of-state company. And if you think about it, with the 200,000 agents, there's a lot of fees that are coming into the department. We do have the lowest appointment fee in the country, aside from the states that, like 3 states that don't charge any fee for the appointment fee. But upon investigation and looking through our expenses and our desire to align the cost of doing business our expenses with the cost of doing business. We want to eliminate the renewal aspect of appointments. And so we want to eliminate the renewal fee of $2 or $5. And so the appointments process would look more like a lifetime appointment or a perpetual appointment. And we believe that during the previous fiscal year, we received $6 million in the renewal part alone. And so that's what we believe our revenues would be reduced by, roughly $6 million. So notwithstanding all the other fees that we may lower if this bill becomes law. Happy to stand for questions.
All right, Representative Neighbor, Ranking Neighbor.
First name is Cindy. It's okay. Eric, I just want to thank you because I know over the last several years, you all have done amazing in reducing fees. And, you know, when we're looking for savings and things, another $6 million is not just chump change. And I think the department has shown a willingness to really reduce those costs. And I hope our agents are happy with that. I hear them. I think they're happy, but they just may be saying something to me. But thank you, and thank you to the commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, I would concur with that. I do have a question regarding the fee fund balance. The $6 million hit, is it going to, obviously it's going to negatively affect it, but is it going to endanger it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the insurance fee fund, I think last I checked, has $71 million. And that has grown because of some sweeps that were happening. And due to litigation, the sweeps are no longer happening.
It's been a long time, come on.
Ultimately, we're trying to adjust our we keep lowering fees, but it's in the nature of insurance, especially with the internet, and any individual can apply very easily to be an agent in all 50 states with a few clicks. So we are working down that balance, and this is one effort that we would like to make to do that.
Excellent, I appreciate that effort, by the way. All right, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, our revisor might have this on the sheet, and I just don't see it. Where is that in the bill where you remove you make the lifelong appointment?
Sure. So just before, Eileen, this is the newly portion. Bottom of page. Yeah. So if you look at the bottom of page 3, you'll see line 38. And this is just for the domestic companies, not the foreign companies. All such companies shall pay a fee of $2 for each newly certified, or for each agent newly certified by the company. And so they would only pay the fee in association with newly appointed agents. So, and once the company appoints an agent once, it's a lifetime appointment until the appointment is terminated.
One second. I'm looking at it too. I was just looking for it, that's all. I'm on the wrong page, no wonder. There we go. Gotcha. All right, thank you. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is more of a semantics question. I mean, I know it says $2 fee for each agent newly certified, but I mean, is that clear enough, or should it be? I mean, Eileen says it is, but I could see someone saying, "Do I have to do this again?"
I think I'll defer to the revisor, but I think in statute it looks relatively simple, but we believe that this only applies to newly appointed agents and would constitute a lifetime appointment.
All right. Think about an amendment on that too. All right, Representative Wagner and then Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, just to clarify, Eric, so the rate changes are not mandated. It's just you took the existing rate and made it not to exceed, so you can drop the rates just as an administrative practice rather than having to go through the insurance committee. I mean, that's basically the gist of this.
Yes.
All right, Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this lifetime appointment, if, say, the insurance company wanted to terminate their agent, well, of course, I'm sure they would send them a letter, but do they contact you in any way and say, hey, this person is no longer our agent?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, so this does not eliminate the requirement for the companies to inform us when they terminate an agent. So they would still have to know, they would still have to notify us.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none. Thanks for being here, Eric. Got all 5 of them finished up. Very good. Committee, you'll also find written-only proponent testimony from Elizabeth Smoller from the Kansas Association of Insurance Agents. So read that when you get the opportunity. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as a proponent of this cost-cutting measure? Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony. Anyone feeling neutral? All right, I will close neutral testimony. Open opponent testimony. Any opposition to this cost-cutting measure? Representative Haskins will be on the. All right, I'll close opponent testimony, seeing none, and close the hearing on HB 2050. Committee, we have done stellar work, by golly, as far as the hearing the bill is concerned. Bills are concerned. We will have the follow-up of that on Wednesday, where we're going to try to work these 5 and then hear 4 more. These are. Oh, absolutely. We're not letting grass grow. This is the insurance committee. Huh? Oh, it's going to be a good time. Now, now, understand, committee, that if we don't have, we're not going to this early in the session going to run into 6 p.m. or something like that. So if we get bogged down and we don't have time to hear all 4 of those bills on Wednesday, then we will put that off, hear them on the following Monday or at a later date as we have time available. So we're going to work first, then hear, and that's the game plan. We'll work these 5, then hear the next 4, time permitting. That is subject to change depending upon what gets on our wheels. So until that time, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.